A tree that's free to grow has a pretty fast growth pattern in its younger years, where it will grow very quickly and then plateau out after a certain age. It's our hope on our timberlands to keep our trees growing in their faster growth patterns. It will typically start to slow down sometimes around 15 years old, where we're starting to get a lot of competition. We can go in and pre-commercially thin to reduce the competition and jump that growth cycle on that tree back up to where its annual increment is something that's productive. As a tree or a stand gets older, starts to get into that merchantable size where we can possibly harvest that tree and take it to a facility where they can use that tree, we may want to look at doing a commercial thin at that time. And the purpose of that thin would be to invigorate the trees that we leave, to jump their growth back up and keep that growth curve up here to where we can prolong that final harvest. What we have here is a partial cross section of a tree on a recent harvest that we're working on. And here you have the center or the pith of the tree and working out towards the bark where the cambium is, and this is where the active growth of the tree is. If you can look at the rings, each ring represents an annual growth of a tree. And if you look at the middle of the tree out to this particular line that I've put on it, this tree was growing fairly slowly during that time period. And I suspect that what was happening there was this tree was a suppressed tree. And at this particular point in time, this tree was opened up and let a little more free to grow. And you can see that the growth rings increased significantly from this time frame to this time frame. And then what we've seen over about the last 8 to 10 years here is this tree has started to slow down again. When the growth starts to decrease, we want to look at harvesting these trees and resetting them and getting growth patterns that are more conducive to good growth. Another interesting point on this particular tree is if you look here, you can see that we've had some beetle work on this tree. So if we hadn't have harvested this particular tree this year, this particular tree would have probably died within the next year. And that's something that people seem to forget, is that any point during the life cycle of a tree, it can perish. And that perish can be lightning, it can be fire, it can be bugs, it can be just about anything that can take the life of the tree through that growth cycle. If we can keep a tree growing in its healthiest point, those trees are under less stress and will tend to fight things such as bug attacks, drought, or other things like that. So it's always our hope to keep these trees vigorous, growing actively. Usually when they start slowing down, they're less healthy and they're susceptible to any kind of other thing that might come in and take that tree's life. I think people think of preservation and think that if we preserve it today, it will be like this always. Well, forests are very dynamic. They will always change. If a forest sometimes is just left and protected where man can't go in there, period, for any reason, you end up with eventually a catastrophic event that takes that forest from us. And sometimes if we don't have the tools in our tool chest to go into that forest after a catastrophic event to treat it, we end up with long-term consequences where that forest is going to take very, very long time to heal up from the natural event, that man can go in there and actually move things along, get that forest healed up a little faster than sometimes nature might.
A mountain just across the way here I grew up on. Lived in a house on the river, met Quentin, and he was we used to call him Huck Finn, run around and cut off Levi's and fishing all the time. And You know, he introduced me to camping and the wildlife and being a country boy and enjoying what God has given us here in Oregon. We're very fortunate, and started logging, and I consider myself an environmentalist. I honestly do, because I don't want to ruin anything we have in Oregon. That wouldn't make any sense. Just recently, I've gone from quite a bit of work, jobs. I had to travel, you know, all over the state, but Superior shut down their road crew. They sold everything off, and that took between $10,000 and $20,000 of income annually for me and my partner. Rough and Ready shut down one side of their road building. We don't have them anymore. It's pretty bleak and scary. We're getting down to one mill in Josephine County. That's a sad day for our ancestors, you know, to not put what God gave us to good use. The trees keep growing, you know. The proof is the stumps out here from the old loggers and the trees growing back, and it makes no sense, you know, to not be managing it, creating jobs, benefiting the hillside. The deer and elk populations thrive in logging areas. All you have to do is ask a hunter, you know, and they'll look for more logging jobs than they do dark, deep, old growth. Glendale, there was a piece of Superior private, and it had all been clear cut and burned, and we were in there thinning their second growth, and there was more owls than I've ever seen anywhere, and there were so many wood rat nests. There was plenty of food. Every morning when we walked down in the timber, there was owls flying through there. Never seen that in any old growth I've been in, you know. So how much ground have they studied that's been clear cut? You know, it's a changing environment, always has been, even before we were logging it. It was burning and starting over. So we should be in there helping out humanity with what we can for a cheap supply of timber, and people can build homes, and it benefits the contractors that build homes, it benefits the hardware stores, benefits the consumer that wants to build a home. And it seems like it's such a common sense issue for anybody that's grown up here, worked in it, hunted. I hunt and fish. That's all I do, is spend my time up here, and so I want the best for it. You know, I don't want it to go away. I want it to be diverse with wildlife, and want something for my children. You know, my kids may be in this industry, so everything I do on a daily basis, if it's cutting down a tree, I'm thinking about, don't hurt this tree, and we're leaving that behind, and what can we do just to make a profit, but as well as leave behind something else to keep going to. People in the big cities who may have never even set foot on a log landing, passing their vote to get believing in the propaganda that they hear, we're destroying the hillsides and the fish are all gone, and it's just doomsday, you know. And I haven't seen that. I've been a lot of places in the state of Oregon, and if you think immediately what you see with your eye doesn't necessarily, you know, that's not the end of the world for that hillside. Even if it was logged very heavily, it grows back, and it should be managed.
I started logging when I was 18 for building right away, and you know, about third generation logger, and it's you know, it's fed my family for all my life, and several before me. We're out here on a county timber sale. This stand that we're in here right now, most of these trees are about 55 or 60 years old. It was probably logged in you know, late 50s, maybe early 60s. You can look around anywhere and you can see that any timber almost that you look at around the area has probably been all cut down at one time. It's a viable resource that when you cut it down, it comes back, you know. When I went to work in the woods, we were still doing BLM, Forest Service clear cuts. And I went back out and looked at them, you know, it's been about 20 years, 25 years, and most of them are almost ready to be harvested in a small diameter stand. Definitely ready to be thinned, and so it does grow back. I don't know why we don't use our own resource right here instead of bringing it in from you know, Canada or someplace else. We still have lots. and it needs to be taken care of. It's so overgrown, if it catches on fire, it does like the biscuit, and it's almost unstoppable. The waste there, I believe they said it was the biggest waste of natural resource ever in the history of the United States. And we don't have to clear cut. We can go in and partial cut these stands and you know, thin them out, make the forest healthier, and prevent fires. And I think that you know, we can do a good job with it and help the forest out. This isn't the old days. You know, we do a lot more. You know, we take care of the forest, and most of the loggers are there to take care of the forest. They're not out to just go out here and tear things up. You know, and there's no way to do it without making some kind of a mess. But everything gets cleaned up pretty good. A lot of the government agencies, the BLM and the Forest Services, went to timber marking that it's called D by D, designated by description, that they give you a prescription of what spacing or what size or basal area you're supposed to leave, and then the loggers takes care of that. And that way it cuts out them having to do a whole bunch of timber sales that they've painted and spent, you know, how many dollars on, and went out and paid their crews to do all that and lay them out, and then just before they sell them, they get protested. So we've got a lot of public dollars tied up in laying these timber sales out that never get logged. And there's a lot of them still standing out there, and then some of them, they even make them go back and paint the marked trees are usually marked with blue paint, and they have to go back and repaint them black so they don't stick out, you know. Just around Grants Pass, there were 7 or 8 mills that have closed down, you know, and as far as the economy goes and the jobs, I mean, this is what our area, most of the areas in Southern Oregon were built on. The lumber, the timber industry, period, you know, it trickled down and gave everybody jobs, you know. I mean, it's not just, hey, the guys out there logging it or the guys at the mill, but I mean, it paid the teachers, it paid, you know, for all of our commissioners and our county workers, you know. It took care of a lot of stuff, but we don't log enough anymore to do a whole lot with it. You know, there's an awful lot of people right now out of work, and you know, I run a small crew of 3 or 4 guys and keep a couple of truck drivers busy, and you know, there's a little bit of a trickle on it, but from the sale administrators to everything else, but I think we can do a lot better than that.
I worked for Superior Helicopter before now that they've went out of business, and I drove log truck for them for 12 years. My son was one of the project managers for the helicopter company. He quit, went to work for himself, logging, and they had a job on the Applegate that was for the rest of the year. They shut all the woods down. So now those people, my son included, might have to go to Alaska because that's still working up there. Now that's pretty sad when everybody moves out of the area because, you know, there's nothing to do. Go back 20, 25 years ago in the Rogue Valley or Josephine County, the industry was booming. The police had plenty of money. The sheriffs had plenty of money. The businesses were doing good. Now, why can't we look back 20 years and say, what made this thing work? Well, people were working. The timber industry was working. They're putting money back into the governments. We didn't have a problem with schools. We had plenty of money going into the schools. They have wilderness areas set aside and more coming all the time where nobody's going to go out and see it. They wanted to take the roads out, the existing roads. Well, that's fine. How are they going to fight the fire? How did they get into the fight the fire if the roads are all gone? The Northwest has been in a depression, or recession, for years and years. We don't even know what they're talking about. They say, well, we're going into a recession. We've been there for years. I wished it would go the other way, where everybody would go back to work, the communities would have plenty of money, the people would spend money, so all the businesses would do well. But, you know, we have to get the government to back off a little bit. This is not their place. The government is supposed to help us, not hinder us. And they're doing a damn good job of fouling things up.